Welcome to Tarleton Trailblazing Talks. I'm your host, Will Porter. Today, we are going to explore Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead. We're going to discuss how courage, vulnerability, trust, and resilience all influence leadership practice in the real world. Tonight, I'm joined by three fabulous guests. Bo Stewart. How are we doing, Bo?
Excellent. Nice to be here.
Wonderful. Tracy Griggs. How are we doing, Tracy?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having us on your talk tonight.
Happy to. And then finally, we've got Dustin Neighbors. How are you doing, Dustin?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. All right. So, as we dive into our discussion here, we're going to start by looking at the concept of vulnerability. The first section in Dare to Lead is rumbling with vulnerability. So, Dr. Brown describes vulnerability not as a weakness, but actually as a path towards courageous leadership. Tracy, before this, we were talking just a little bit, and you were talking about a time where you had to lead a situation that you didn't know all the details. I was curious what that looked like and what did you learn from it?
So yeah, I'd love to kind of share that with y'all. It's actually super fresh. There was a situation where something was brought to us and we had to investigate a teacher. Um, so it started with just kind of like an innocent thing, like she said this, and so we have to start looking into that. Well, then it kind of just starts unfolding into all of these layers. Well, this teacher also had a trip planned for these kids this weekend for 28 kids to go 9 hours away. So more than just like in a regular situation. Now we have all of these kids looking to us, wanting to know why their teacher's not here and if they're going to get to go on this trip or not. I've got parents calling me asking like where their money is, if they're going to get refunded, if they still get to go on this trip. We have to figure out if the buses were booked, if the hotel rooms were booked, all of this extra thing, while still trying to just be there and stay calm and confident and not just tell these kids and the teacher, like, we have no idea what's going on right now. Like, we've got to figure it out. And it is kind of tricky because it was very much like a need to know because there's like an active investigation that was going on. But we did have to, like they were all looking for answers and all of them deserved some kind of an answers. Like these parents deserve to know, is my money that we spent on all of this going to get used for this trip? Um, and so even though I didn't fully have all of the answers yet, I just remember feeling the tension between wanting to appear very certain and confident in what we were saying, but also not give a false hope and not lose trust with them at the end of the situation. I think that one thing that I just kind of had to figure out through it is that they really don't want a flawless leader, that they just needed to know the need to know truth, and that we were doing what we could and that we were giving them information just kind of as it was provided. I think that ultimately it's kind of taught me that leadership isn't really about having every single answer, but it's just about showing up and being a support, being honest with what we were able to share with them, and just having confidence and meeting all of their needs and answering all of the questions that we could at that time, just with a calm confidence while we still investigated.
I liked what you mentioned there about uh, not being able to give out all the answers, but they deserve an answer. So sort of having that relationship aspect of being a leader, and then also being able to build trust upon that. I was wondering if Dustin or Bo, if y'all could share a time how you had to be vulnerable, and then how that impacted trust, sort of being a key theme with this section of the book. Uh, sort of how that situation impacted trust and collaboration with your team during this situation.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. They weren't my team yet. It was actually a job interview with a panel of people, and they asked me, like, the question was, what keeps you honest? I thought for a quick second, uh, and then I said, fear. And then I just let that sink in for a second in all these people's minds. And then I told them, I'd rather be honest with you about a mistake or about a situation, basically not lie to you, than be dishonest and then be in that room with you where you call me out on it and I have been caught in a lie. And it is that fear of having that, right, that shame that, you know, is able to build trust. So they're thinking maybe, okay, well, this is what he's scared of. He's probably going to toe the line if we hire him, right? But I had to be vulnerable in that instance too to let them, because when you say fear, you know, this is kind of a, I don't want to say negative connotation, but if you tell someone in a job interview that you're scared to do something, it's kind of like, wait a second. But again, I led into it with, the whole idea of being honest, and it led to trust. I ended up getting hired. I work with them, and I felt like that kind of set, I want to say the tone, but I hope they remembered that from the first day to after 6 months and a year. Like this is a guy who said he was scared of being dishonest. Like we could probably believe what he's saying, hopefully.
I totally understand that. I kind of have a similar fear of doing things wrong and getting called out or whatever the case may be. So sort of that similar fear, and it's sometimes hard to let that armor down. Dr. Brown's always talking about the armor, your leadership armor that you rely on. So I was curious if y'all could sort of talk about a way that y'all lower your armor, and or if there's a specific type of armor that she mentions in the book that y'all tend to rely on.
Yeah, I'll jump on that one. So the leadership armor that I tend to rely on the most is control, right? So I'm someone who teaches and leads in an academic setting. I naturally want things to run efficiently, right? Predictably. When uncertainty and conflict arises, I find myself really stepping in there trying to fix or organize or manage it instead of allowing others to work through it, right? So Brene Brown's work helped me to kind of realize this instinct, while it's well intentioned, can block collaboration and can keep me from showing true trust in others, right? And so lowering that armor means embracing the vulnerability. By letting go of that need to have every answer. Of course, I teach math, so having every answer's, that's kind of my thing, right? But instead of just jumping in and controlling the outcomes, I'm learning to create space for others to contribute, even if it means the process feels messy or slower, right? So particularly that looks like, or practically, it looks like asking more open-ended questions, right? Inviting feedback early, being honest when I don't know something, right? So it's uncomfortable, but it builds stronger trust and ownership across the team, right? So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
No, I definitely agree. Kind of similar. Managing a team of student workers, letting go of control can be scary. So also the fear and perfectionism. So I definitely understand and agree with you. While we're talking about teams and sort of what we look for with leaders and things like that, the idea of values kind of comes to mind to me, which seems like a good segue to section 2, living into our values. Again, Dr. Brown discusses values. They can't just be named, can't just be words on the wall. They also have to be something that's lived out. So I was wondering if one of y'all could just sort of start this conversation by sharing what your top leadership values are. Mine would probably be sort of trust or integrity, something along those lines.
Yeah.
I can't lead you if I can't trust you is kind of the easiest way I could explain that. But I'll pass it off to one of y'all.
Let me jump on that because I've got two, and one of them is integrity, right? So integrity, it guides everything that I do as an educator and as a leader. I believe in doing what's right, even when it's, like inconvenient or goes unnoticed. So, and that means being like transparent with colleagues, right? Honest with students, consistent between what I say and what I do. So Brene Brown's idea of living into our values resonates deeply with me, right? So it's integrity isn't about perfection. It's just about alignment with the values, that I have, right? The other one would have to be growth. So the first thing I do in my algebra classroom, first lesson, is all about growth mindset. So I want them to know, your mind's like a muscle. You didn't start out running track. You had to kind of lead into that. It's all about growth. And so just like that, I see leadership as this learning process, right? It's not just a position. I value curiosity, reflection, and even feedback, even though, a lot of times feedback's uncomfortable. Whether that's improving my teaching, mentoring others, or developing new ideas, I try to model what it looks like to stay open to change together. These two values kind of keep me grounded and continually moving forward as an educator and hopefully one day as a leader.
I think that's
I'd like to
great.
jump in there real
Yeah,
quick.
go ahead,
Well,
Bo.
you said something about, I can't lead you if I don't trust you. And it reminded me of that time in our class when our professor had said, if you get out too far, you get shot in the back. What do you recall the exact phrase or how that came
I
into?
think that was a pretty rough estimate. It was something along those lines. If you
Something about leading too far ahead.
right, if
You
you get
get,
too far in
yeah.
front, you're going to get shot in the back. Something along
Uh-huh.
those
Yeah.
lines.
But when you said that about, can't lead you if I can't trust you, that rung a bell with that because it's true. It's
Exactly right.
if you're worried about getting shot in the back, this is an issue.
That's right. That's right. And I think that kind of ties into something Dustin mentioned just now when talking about his values, how living up to those values can cause some discomfort and cause some ruffles within your organization or with those around you. Uh, so I think that's a great point. And I was just wondering if y'all could sort of share a time where living value, living out your values really caused some discomfort or required some courage.
Yeah, I was on the train, the DART train in Dallas, and there was a time when that exact thing happened where I had to basically step up for somebody who couldn't defend themselves. There was a guy on the train who was harassing a woman for no particular reason. I mean, he started like this, pouring his bottle of water on the ground in front of her, staring at her, just enticing her, right? Antagonizing her. But then he got up and got in her face, and it was go time, right? Somebody
Right.
needed to help this lady. And as fate would have it, there was a big man sitting next to me. So I just thumped him on the leg, and we made eye contact. He was wearing headphones. He couldn't hear me, but I was like, you got my back, right? Like, we got to do something. He gave me the nod, so I felt confident. I get up and I do the right thing, right? I get in the middle of it, tell this guy, knock it off, cut it out. I put on my tough face, but I knew that that other guy, he had my back, and so that kind of alleviated some of the discomfort, and gave me be more courageous, right? Because I knew if something happened, if he spit on me or pulled out a knife or something, there's two of us. We could have taken him down. And he was a big man, young, fit, But there are times, they say, a shaking container spills what's inside. And I find that to be very true. We can talk all we want, but when it's go time or when we get really upset, how we react is what is inside of us. And discomfort or not, this is, things need to be done at a certain time. And you want to talk the talk, you got to walk the walk with the values, especially.
I think that's great. That kind of segues into my next question of, aligning your decisions with your values when it becomes difficult. Sort of, how do you do that? How do you approach that? I think it can be definitely difficult for sure.
So I think it's like Bo just said, like you have to be who you are on the inside. And so like whenever a situation does become difficult, a lot of times it's easy to get flustered because it's like an emergency situation that you feel like needs an answer right then. But I think that if you want to stay true to yourself, then you have to be able to take a step back. Dr. Brown talks about the rumble and how that's like those difficult conversations that you have. I think that you need to be able to have like the internal dialogue as well of the rumble and have like that internal clarity. And sit down and just ask yourself like, okay, who am I serving in this moment? What do they need? What is going to be best for either this group of students or this teacher or whoever whoever you need to fix the situation for, like what is the best outcome for those people or that group of people. And just knowing that it may not be the popular decision, but that it's about courage over comfort is something that she talks very heavily about in the book, and that you do right by those that you're serving, and that it needs to be a decision that something I always tie it back to is I truly love and respect my like upper admins so much. Like I'm very, very close to them because we've just built a relationship over the past couple, 10 years since I've been in this district, that I know that they will have my back and they know that I would go to war for any of them and I'm going to work my tail off every day. But make sure that I don't do anything that is going to embarrass them or put them or the school district in a situation that could compromise their integrity or how we look or just like the unit as a whole. So just being able to take a step back and realize like, okay, I need to respond to this and not react to this. And I need to remember, like, if I go right now with these heavy emotions, then I'm reacting and it's probably not going to be good. So just kind of take a step back, take a breather. Even if you feel like you don't have a lot of time, you can step away for a second, kind of gather your thoughts, bring yourself back down to earth, and then respond from just who you truly are at your core and why you got into leading in people.
That's great. I definitely agree. Uh, what you mentioned about your admin team, I think, ties in quite well into our next section of braving trust and talking about trust, this idea of trust. Sounds like you've got some good people behind you, ready to support you when they need to. So Dr. Brown defines trust with this idea of braving, this acronym. So it's boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. So I'm curious, which part of braving comes most naturally to y'all and why?
Let me jump in on that one. So the part of braving that comes most naturally to me is reliability, right? So I take pride in being someone that you can depend on. And now those of you that know me personally know I've got 5 children, single dad over here. Literally reliable is I have to be. I don't have a choice, right? So, but I take that to work with me, and whether it's my students, my colleagues, or just my team members, right? I teach on a team of like 17 algebra instructors. If I say I'm going to do something, I make sure it gets done and done as well as I can, right? I'm not perfect, but try to get it done well, right? So consistency has always been an important thing to me, especially in leadership roles, right? So people are generally they're just looking for stability and follow through in a leader, right? And reliability is a big part of that. So reliability, it also builds trust over time, right? So I've learned that credibility doesn't just come from big gestures. It comes from showing up every day, keeping commitments, and following through even when it's inconvenient, right? So this aligns with that whole Brene Brown's idea that trust is built in small moments. For me, reliability is how I show respect to the people I work with and demonstrate that their time and trust matters to me.
I would say I'm pretty similar with you, Dustin. Reliability, accountability. I think there's a lot of overlap between the two. I always try to be the you got it type of guy.
Yeah.
If you need something done, let's make it happen.
When
Uh,
Bo talked about fear, that's my fear is letting
yeah,
my team down. Like, because
exactly,
I can drop the ball quite easily. Letting my team down, I'm terrified of it, right?
exactly. Yeah, yeah. I'd rather it be something that only impacts me
Correct.
personally versus the team. No,
Yep.
I'm same way, same way. I'm curious what component of Braving's most challenging for y'all.
So I'm with both of y'all that I think that by far the one that I'm the best at is reliability, but I think because that is like my strong area, that I've worked so hard to be that person that everyone knows, like, oh, we can all go to her and it'll get done and be there for everybody. That boundaries are probably my least. And I'm really good at telling other people to set boundaries. Like I'll tell my teachers all day long, like, if you're home with a sick kid, turn your phone off. Like you don't need to see an email, like you need to be present with them. Meanwhile, I'll be at home at 10 o'clock at night and a teacher will message me something that really probably doesn't need to be done until next week. But I'm like, oh, she needs it. I'm going to get it for her right now because that's just how I am. And so I feel like it does always kind of just spread me thin, but I'm not very good at the boundaries piece and telling them no, or hey, this person's over this now, like go take that to them. I want to help everybody all the time, and it's a blessing and a curse.
I get that. Sometimes it just feels like it needs to be done. I got to do it.
Yes. And
But for
if
me,
I do it right now, it'll just be done and it won't be there later.
You're right. The box
for
has
me,
been
it's because
checked.
I'll never remember. I'll never remember.
You're
So
right.
I better do
Yes.
it right now because
Right.
it's not happening tomorrow.
I have to remember to mark emails as unread so that way I could get it done in the morning.
Red
That's
Yeah.
flag. I have to go back and do this. Yep.
that's been my secret to that. So we're talking about how this all ties into trust. So I'm curious if y'all could share a time where trust was damaged when working with others or working with a team, and then what would sort of be required to rebuild that trust?
Take a stab at that one. I had a colleague of mine come into my office, um, all bent out of shape, clearly upset, and telling me why they were so upset. And I listened and I remained calm and I tried to find questions and explain. My heart was pounding. I could feel myself getting hot, remained calm, kept voice down, and listened and listened and listened. And then something came to my mind like, oh, I should summarize, right? So that we're on the same page. So I say, when they were all done, I said, so let me see if I understand you. What you're saying is you want us to leave you alone. Stood up. They were already standing, but they postured and yes. And I was like, bingo. Okay, got it. But that's a problem because the person that I was relaying the information to them from is their boss, our boss. And I was like, I explained it, but it was clear. Leave me alone. Leave me out. And I'm busy with the other. Okay. So it was fine. They left. But obviously it wasn't fine because then I told my other colleagues, hey, we gotta leave that person alone. They're like, what? I said, yeah, they clearly just told me, leave them alone. My colleagues are like, well, you gotta tell the boss that. I'm like, what? Do I? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. Because again, the information was coming from the boss. Task. So my hands were like shaking, when I'm telling the boss now about what happened. My boss, she could see that I was upset and rattled. It was the first time she'd seen me rattled. Explain everything, and of course she's like, well, I need to have a meeting with them. I need to talk to them, sort this out. They can't just be sitting on an island, leave me alone. We got work to do. They're part of the team. You know how it goes. So, okay. They have a meeting, which the person was reluctant to attend, but they had the meeting and they lied. The
Ooh.
question was asked to them, did you say to leave you alone? I didn't say that. They lied. So
Mm.
of course my boss comes back to me and was like, they denied it. And my boss in the next breath, without hesitation, was like, I'm not even going to get into figuring out who said what or who lied. It doesn't matter. But, you know, my boss said, I think that they did that out of fear of their job, fear, job security, because of course it would be a problem for them to cop to that and, you know, try and explain why, like they just flat out lied. So trust broken? Yeah, it was between my colleague and I. Um, how to rebuild it? That's a good question. And I asked myself that because it still hasn't been rebuilt. I don't go out of my way to converse with that person. Yeah, I'm civil. Yeah, I say hello, but I haven't attempted to rebuild that or anything. But I think what would need to happen is that I would need to forget about it, right? Give them a second chance, but that's kind of difficult to do when they've already shown what length they'll go to just to save face. So
Yeah.
it's a tough one. But I think it's on me in the end to forget about it and move on and, just pretend like it never happened.
I think our last section kind of ties back to that somewhat, of learning to rise. So, taking these difficult situations, scenarios, feedback, and things like that, and being able to recover and grow from it. Uh, so, kind of talking about that whole idea, uh, man, Bo, that's definitely a setback. So, I was wondering if someone could, just sort of talking about setbacks that help shape your leadership approach and how that's really sort of impacted you moving forward.
So mine is going to I can answer that one, and it's going to kind of answer on the last question too, because it does talk about like an experience where kind of trust was broken, but then it led into how that kind of helped shape how I deal with other people. Our team at work, I feel like the high school administrators are very, very close. And we had a leader here a couple years ago who was like the best person I've ever worked for. And like we were truly all like best friends. Like we loved hanging out. Our families would hang out. We would go on like family vacations. Like, I mean, we just grew so close. And people started to get promotions. And so our head principal moved to central office to be an assistant superintendent. One of the other girls who was the associate principal at the time got moved to go like run her own campus. Well, then it comes down to, okay, well, now one of the two of us who is really close is probably going to get a new position or get moved around some. Um, like I said, we were all like best friends. I noticed slowly that like some of my stuff started coming up missing, and it was like first my radio and then my keys and then all these other things. Well, then this person who was actually like a really good friend, started drawing attention to it because I am a little scatterbrained sometimes. And he'd be like, "Oh, where'd you put her keys? She can't keep up with everything." Well, then our head principal at the time was in his office and goes to get a write-up and finds all of my stuff in the bottom drawer of his desk. And he had been doing it intentionally to make it look like I was very scatterbrained, like I could never keep up with my stuff. But that person was a friend. And so it was difficult because I'm like, okay, do I go about this as like a, "you sorry," like go off on him because he was intentionally sabotaging me? Or do I go about it as like a repair the friendship because, and just like reassure him like, "Hey, we're good. Like we're equals, we're chill, like we're fine." Um, and so it was one of those, like one of the rumble conversations. Like I had to go and I asked my head principal at the time, like, "How do I handle this? Like, what do I do?" And the awkward thing is he found it in his office when I was in there with him because we were looking for like a detector and then a write-up. It was just a whole thing. Um, and so luckily I didn't find it by myself because I'm like, nobody would ever believe me on that. So we had to sit down and we did have to figure out like, how do we rebuild trust? Because we were all so close. And now 3 of our homies just dipped out for other jobs in the district. And so like, it's you and me and we're a team and we're about to get this whole new team. And like our energy and how we feed off of each other is going to shape this entire thing. And so I felt like I had to sit down and kind of go through that whole strategy of like the braving, and like we had to, like I did have to be vulnerable and like what is the problem, like why. It was very uncomfortable, but I feel like he did eventually kind of take some accountability for it, and that it was just not threatened but like wanted kind of the upper hand in things, and he admitted it and he realized where he was wrong. And I still don't think that I trust him like 100%, but I still trust him. Like, I mean, we've grown from the uncomfortableness and the vulnerability and the talks and stuff like that. So like we've overcome that, if that makes sense. Sorry, that was a long story, but it kind of tied into the old one and this one. And it was a setback because then it was very uncomfortable at work for a little bit because it's like, I don't know what I can say to him. I don't know if I can trust him. Like, do I want him working this investigation with these kids with me, or do I feel like he's going to throw me under the bus and act like I did something wrong or take something out of context? So it was just something that we had to face head on, and then we kind of just rolled with it. And now we're pretty much back to like we were. And family vacations and stuff are no longer a thing, but I still love him dearly and his daughter and all of them. So
I feel like that sounds like an episode of like Parks and Recs or something, you know?
right.
Like a prank
I'm
gone
like,
so far. That was wild. That's a wild.
yeah, hey, took my keys and my walkie-talkie and like my metal detector, like my wand, and then would tell everybody every day, like, "She's losing everything. Like, she's such a mess." I'm like, "I swear I left it on my desk." Like, to the point I was putting cameras in my office because I thought I was going crazy.
You were Leslie on Parks and Rec, and they were pranking you
Yeah.
in the office.
Yeah, except it wasn't a prank. The
Yeah, that's
sabotage.
the wildest part of the story. Because I mean, I'd have said it was a prank if that was that guy. I was like, oh, I went too far. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Wild that he was
Wow.
serious about it, and then still has a job is also wild.
Well, but like, and that's the thing though. I didn't go like, I didn't want to like I didn't want him to not have a job. You know what I mean? Like I still needed him and I still wanted him on this campus because he did have a really good place. And like he is good at what he does. There was just a little bit of the competitiveness, which I appreciate competitive. I can get down with that. Just we talked about how we do it.
Sabotage is too far.
I love what you said about the idea or the coming to terms with him that you had. Like the other 3 have gone. We're going to bring in new people. So it's on us to like, how are we going to move forward? Because culture is contagious. And whatever
sure.
you have with him, whatever, displays that we put out, people are going to catch on to it and they're going to adapt to it. And you have to set that right culture. And knowing that despite, the situation being what it was and the feelings and just the, to rise above that and be like, look, we got a job to do. We got an institution to take care of, and we need to set the tone. I like that.
Thank you.
Man.
Y'all are better people than me. The leave me alone guy.
The mission is more important than the individual.
Y'all are way better than I am, I think.
You could do the old school trick and put a thumbtack upside down on his chair.
Yeah. Hey, I've got tons of these kids that owe me favors. I could do way worse if I wanted.
The prank can be endless.
Uh-huh.
That's funny. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start moving us towards closing here. So, as we wrap up, I just want to encourage our listener to reflect on the concepts that we've discussed from Dare to Lead. We have an attached leadership guide that you can find. I encourage you to go through. You're going to find 7 actionable, reflective questions that will help you take the information from the text and actually apply it to your own role as a leader. Dr. Brown reminds us that leadership is a daily practice. It's not just a fixed trait. So I really encourage you to go through those questions to reflect on how you can grow as a leader. But sort of in closing here, I just want to close with a commitment from each of us, again, going towards that sort of growth mindset. What's one courageous leadership practice you can commit to working on this month? Mine would probably tie back to somewhat of that perfectionism or letting go of control. Just really trying to put trust into my team so that way we can still get the job done, and it just makes everyone feel better. They feel more empowered by being able to do the task themselves, and then it also just helps me out by that's one more task I don't have to do because now I have an awesome team member that can take care of it for me.
I'll piggyback on that, just talking about attitude, not getting down about all the red tape or the changes to policy, the inconveniences that we have throughout the day and the week, deadlines, the revisions of documents, and all the things that happen in the course of the day where we work. It's not just us. They're experiencing it as well. And they'll feed off of us, or they'll, if you're negative, maybe that opens the door to them being negative. And so really just maintaining that attitude of, hey, got a job to do. Let's get it done. We're going to have these things. We need to persevere through it. And what I said earlier, culture is contagious. True leaders, if they can establish the right kind of culture or a trend towards a better culture, this is the way to go, because it's a lot easier to go down, right, than to build it back up.
All right. So I think the thing that I want to work on is committing to be more open and honest in my conversations, especially when it comes to things that might be uncomfortable. And so, I want to prepare something that's thoughtful, that's respectful, but also remember that being clear is being kind. So that's kind of where I'm at with mine, is I just want to be more open and honest and have those uncomfortable conversations when they need to happen.
So I guess since I said that my weakest area was the boundaries, I should probably make that my commitment, is to put some more boundaries in place. And it's kind of like I think about it and I'm like, I don't even know where to start. What am I going to do? But I think starting with my time is a good one. Like from this time to this time, probably 6:30 p.m. until 6 a.m. That's my time with my family and my kid. I do subs in the morning, so I'm getting messages by 5:30. Just that's my time with my family and my kids, and that I'm not asking stuff of you during that time. And if you ask it of me at that time, just understand that I'm not going to get back to it until the next day, probably. I even still said probably. That means I'm not ready for this step of it, but I will do it.
Boundaries is 100% what you should do after having all your stuff stolen and put in your boss's drawer.
Exactly.
Boundaries were non-existent.
Exactly.
We were all friends.
Boundaries.
Man.
But it worked out. We're great together now.
That's good. That's good. Well, thank you all to my esteemed guests, and then thank you to the listener for listening to this episode of Tarleton Trailblazing Talks. We hope this conversation has encouraged you to let down your armor and lead with courage. Thank you.